Okay. Thank you very much, Sonia, Laura. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola. Hello. um, I've spent many years at European level involved in projects, and I am a committed European, I think, most of the time. I don't like all the bureaucracy, but I certainly enjoy a lot of the engagements I've had through the years with farmers right across Europe. And I think the European Union has been very good in that we've been able to look at best practice in many countries, in Spain, Italy, also, in the development of food systems, and also I would also say the difficulties and the obstacles to small food, because what we have to remember is with the green revolution and with the industrialization of our food systems, which is ongoing, it makes it much harder to really produce quality food in a small way, because both the farming system and the industrial food system is really not conducive to the kind of work that we are doing. But the one thing is that the consumer and the person who's the average person, I would say, on the street, they want good food. And I think in the lockdown with COVID, I think we have had a reconnection between people and food locally, because many people are now working from home. Many people are unemployed or maybe on pandemic payments. They are not able to go more than 5 kilometers from their house. That means that their local market is probably the only thing in their local town that is open other than shops, maybe food shops. So I suppose our history as a co-op came about. We had in Leitrim, which is we're very lucky. We had many people from the United Kingdom, from Germany, from Holland, who came into Leitrim in the 1990s, trying to escape the industrial lifestyles of Europe. Came in, bought small farms, started to farm organically, and then needed to find markets for their produce. And so Leitrim Organic Farmers Co-op came about because of that need. There was a need, first of all, for a collectivization of people involved in organic food. And there was also a need for people to trade and find routes to market. And so we stepped into the breach and we looked at the produce that we had, and we looked at opportunities in the market to sell that produce. And we did that at two different levels. We did it at one level where we looked at small livestock farmers, and the livestock farmers needed to sell their small animals. So we worked with the local mart, or we call them marts, or cattle market, and we now have a market once every month where organic farmers locally can sell their younger animals to farmers in the eastern and southern part of the country, who then fatten them and take them to market. So that's been one strand of what we've done. But then we also looked as well at the localization of the food, the shorter food supply chain, to see what we could do. And in around 2005, farmers markets started to appear in Ireland. One of our most famous cooks or chefs, therein Allen, started in Middleton in County Cork with a market, and they started to spread. And in our area, we looked at what we had. We looked at the farmers. We looked at ourselves. We looked at what we could produce and what we could sell locally. And so, if we on the screen here, I'm just going to, as I scroll through it. First of all, this is just the market area in the local town. This is Sean here, who sells flowers, and we also have Porrick, who does eggs there. But one of the unique things we did in ourselves was we came together and we looked at, we had so many people producing lambs, producing chickens, producing beef. And we decided that we collectively as a co-op needed to get together and to try and sell this locally. So we went to a local butcher who agreed to work with us. And we purchased a unit like this. This is a more modern version now. We purchased it from France, and we started to attend other markets, one in Sligo, one in the eastern parts of the country. But when the local market started, then we turned up every week. And so we also employed a butcher, and the butcher, he looked after the slaughtering of the cattle, making sure the product was presented properly. We got the organic certification for it, and it was a way of finding a market locally for products that was produced locally. So this has been going. This market has been going since 2006, and it still happens every Thursday. The butcher has taken over the unit, and he's selling all these different products each week. So we just have a little profile of each person in the market. Deirdre, who does her cottage herbs, she produces the herbs in North Leitrim. Then we have another vegetable producer, Reggie. He grows vegetables, but he also buys from other producers as well. And what you find in Ireland is probably similar to on the continent, is that you have people who are maybe wholesalers, but then you have other people who produce as well. So this is Keelan. She produces her flowers naturally. She doesn't use any chemicals, pesticides, or anything else like that. And she has, beautiful flowers all year round. I know that I often hear people saying that with industrialized flowers that come from Kenya and everywhere, they look lovely, but they don't smell of anything. And one of the things that you do get in the market is you get a great floral scent with these flowers. So we also have a sourdough baker locally, Franck, who has come from France. And this is the great thing about the market, is that we have people from many countries who are both stall holders and who are also producers, but also our customers as well. So we get very good sourdough bread through the baker, and he has a very loyal following. And again, I guess we wouldn't be Irish unless we had good quality fish. And here's Jerry with the shades on from Donegal. I think he's got some flatfish there. I'm not exactly sure what's in front, but he has a very loyal following. Again, he's buying from smaller boats up in Donegal and local trawlers. He used to be a fisherman himself, and I think this is very important, that you're with people who are artisan, that they also have an understanding of the fishing, and they can explain to customers how you cook fish, because although Ireland is an island nation, we weren't always a fish-eating nation, because being a Catholic country, fish was something that was, seen as slightly as a poor man's dish, but also was something as well that was also equated with penance, something that you ate on a Friday as a kind of penance, which of course is a very nice penance to have now. But so I think we're only rediscovering our fish again, and fish cooking and fish consumption has gone up greatly in recent years. We have our friend here, Mario, who produces microgreens. Again, a growing area of consumption. People using microgreens, microsalads as part of their food has become much more popular in recent years. And then, of course, as well, we have a full range of cheeses as well at the market. Now, sadly, Trevor, who was at the market, he, due to illness, is not there anymore, but we have Marcel, a Dutch gentleman and his wife, and they now supply the cheeses at the market every week. And we have local cheeses from Ireland, but we also as well have some continental cheeses. We would have Gouda from Holland, and some cheeses we bring in. But we have a fine array of Irish farmhouse cheeses and organic cheeses, and these are continuing to develop. And as you can see there as well from the screen, he also supplies local raw milk. So we have Patrick Bradley, a local raw milk producer, and it's great to be able to get that, because again, people are starting to reconnect with the benefits of non-pasteurized and non-homogenized product. So I think it is very good to be able to have all of these producers. And in the county, we have other markets as well. One in Manorhamilton, one in Ballinamore, which is still there's still ongoing work there. But again, we also have. So this is just an opportunity for people locally to see, who the producers are, where they are, and the various different produce that's available. So this is one route to market. We would describe this as supplying to a short food supply chain. More recently, we have started to work with individual farmers. So we might have a farmer in the co-op who wants to sell from his farm or her farm. And so we also have something now called community supported agriculture, or CSA. And what CSA is the farmer grows his crops and produces whatever it is potatoes and vegetables and salads and all of that. And the consumer buys directly from the farmer. The consumer pays in advance. So if you want a supply of vegetables throughout the year or in season, you pay the farmer, then the farmer goes and sows the crops, and then you visit the farm every week to buy your eggs and vegetables and all of that. And that is starting to become more common in the country. And we now have upwards, I think now, of 20 to 30 community supported farms operating throughout the country. And I think that is another model where the consumer can reconnect again with food, and the consumer can reconnect with farming. We, as well as the community supported model, we have other models where farmers, we say they produce food and then they use the internet, or they use something called neighbor food to supply to consumers. And so what neighbor food is works on the basis that somebody has a large building, maybe an industrial building, and what they do is once a week they assemble food from a whole range of producers in this building. So if I'm producing eggs, I can put them up onto the neighbor food site. The consumer can buy those eggs. I hold on to 80% of the value. The host gets 10% and the website gets 10%. So, in a lot of supply chains, farmers hold on to very little of the actual value of their product. And so this idea of neighbor food is really good. And the shorter the supply chain, the less the less intermediaries, the more money that the producer is actually holding on to. And I think this is something that personally the co-op is working on. The co-op also has links to other European organizations with similar goals. So we have links to La Via Campesina, which would be well known in Southern Europe. And we have, there is a European representation body called ECBC that represent smallholders now at European level. And, we have been very critical over all the years with the Common Agricultural Policy. The Common Agricultural Policy has failed to represent or to recognize small producers, whether you call them campesinas if you're in Spain, or if you call them smallholders as we do in our part of the world. But under the new Common Agricultural Policy, smallholder or campesina will be recognised. And the way they will be recognised is, number one, is that the payments that come through Europe, through the through CAP, the CAP payments, they will be front loaded for smaller producers. Well, so that would mean that if there is a payment per hectare of, say, 20 euros, that the smallholder gets maybe 50 or 60 euros for the first number of hectares. So it's a recognition that smallholders, by virtue of their size, need a larger payment than they're getting currently from the CAP, and many of them are not actually getting any payments at all. So there is now a recognition and for these people, and indeed here in Ireland, we have a junior Minister for Agriculture from the Green Party, and I think that also is helping to give greater recognition to farmers farming to agroecological systems, such as organics being the main one in Ireland. It's also important that I think the people here who look at Ireland as being a very green country understand that we are green we have different shades of green. We have industrial agriculture, which I fundamentally disagree with, which is causing us to produce a lot more nitrogen and nitrates and is having a negative effect on the environment. But we also have a growing number of people practicing agroecological methods and people who recognize that in the production of food, we have to reduce our footprint, our carbon footprint, but also as well our own ecological footprint, and that we have to be, we are a net exporter of food, and we export an awful lot of commoditized food around the world, but we also need to, I think, reduce our dependence on product that's intensively produced and to produce more food locally to displace imports, but also as well to produce food of a much higher, with much more nutrients in it. And we are getting very close now to where there's science, which basically can tell you the nutrient density of food. So a lot of they say that an apple that was produced 50 years ago is possibly 100% more nutrient dense than the apple produced today. And that's because we have started through intensification and using chemical fertilizers. We are forcing plants to produce food while they don't take up all the micronutrients from the soil. So the alternative to that is that you produce food in a slower, more sustainable way, but that food is much more nutrient dense. So it's looking at the micronutrients that we need, like zinc, manganese, magnesium, which is very much lacking now in the human diet, and many people lack these very important trace elements, which we get through produced organic food. We now have technology that will be available via your mobile phone in the near future, which will allow you to point at food, and it will give you a reading of how nutrient dense that food is. And I think that there's the good side of technology and there's the downside. But the good side of technology is that if we can harness technology to allow us to feed ourselves better, then that has to be a good thing. So I mean, if your mobile phone and it reads the food and it can tell that you have food here that's nutrient dense, it helps you make decisions for you and your family around your own health and well-being. So I see that as being an important move forward. I see the whole changes in the CAP, which will favour smallholders. Also, as well, I mean, right across Europe, we have a huge decline in bee populations, but generally in insect populations. And indeed, they call this the insect apocalypse. And it came home to me some years ago. I had a group of German MEPs who came across Germany in a bus to visit Ireland. And they visited one of our local farms Tommy Early's farm at Mount Allen. And it was interesting, they'd driven all the way across Europe, and they virtually had no fly. Normally in summer, you would have a lot of insects that crash into the windscreen of the bus. But they said it was only when they got to Ireland that they started to notice that they had to clean the windscreen a little bit more. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's a scientific result, but I'm just saying that, we still have an environment that's still good for nature, that allows insect life, bird life, all of these things to be sustained. But we are very quickly going down the same route as many of our European neighbours, where we are still trying to intensify part of our agriculture. And in that drive for intensification, we're starting to lose insect life, bird life, and the EU is saying, well, hold on, farmers are getting paid to produce food that is in harmony with the environment, and yet all the metrics are showing that we're losing bird life, insect life, and so on. So I think that there's no choice except for the new CAP when it comes in to be proactive in terms of rewarding the farmers who do the right thing. And I think you do that by a results-based process. So what I say about results is that if you take a farm, you can go in and you can do a baseline study of the ecology on the farm. And then you can measure that over a period to see, is that improving or is it disimproving? And I think where it's disimproving, there's no reward. Well, I think where the farm, the habitats are improving, and that is measurable with new technology, I think that that should be rewarded. And that's not always, you don't always require new technology. For instance, on one of our board members' farms, he has a simple moth trap. It's a trap with a bulb, and at night he puts on the bulb, and the moths will be attracted to the light, and then through a simple counting system, he can work out, how many different varieties of moths he's supporting on the farm. And of course, he could measure that now, and he could measure it in 12 months' time to see, is the situation improving or disimproving. So I think what we have to do is we have to apply technology and science in order to help to support farmers to improve what they're doing, that they become more aware that while they're producing food, they also have a duty of care to the environment, and that and then you have the other knock-on benefits in that should enhance us as a tourist destination for ecological tourism. And I have to use that word tourism advisedly, because much tourism in the world is damaging. But I think that ecotourism can have a role, and it can be a different model for tourism. And in Ireland, we, with our lakes, rivers, and coastline, and so on, we're also developing through the countryside as well some new walking trails, similar to the Camino de Santiago in northern Spain. But we're seeing more appetite now as people have started walking in the lockdown and start again appreciate the benefits of outdoors. I think there will be a strong appetite from that going forward. And I think it's something as well that our European neighbours would appreciate, the capability of being able to come to Ireland, to walk through the countryside, eat the good food that's available, enjoy the music, enjoy everything else that we have to offer here. So it's a kind of a new vision really for how the countryside might look and how we might operate, and indeed how we go about our lives, both from a social point of view, but also as well from the point of view of having to both produce food and consume food. So they're just some thoughts that come to mind. One other thing that the organic farm, and I myself am an organic farmer. I have rare breed animals. I keep what's called Irish Moyle cattle. These are cattle that they predate the Vikings, but they were a breed that almost became extinct. And so many organic farmers are involved with heritage and rare breeds, simply again because they're all part of biodiversity. They're things that are really important for us to preserve. And the reason even more so now, because as the environment comes under pressure and plants and animals need to adapt, if you have breeds that have adapted in a particular environment over millennia, they have a much better chance when you end up with a changing climate. So they may have existed in a warmer time, in a colder time, in a time when there was, maybe, where there were other vagaries in the climate. But I think that so many of us recognise the need to maintain these old breeds, and indeed these old and ancient breeds as well. Usually, and that will exist on maybe they can eat poorer forage, which are poorer grassland that we have in the west of Ireland. Right through from the 1950s onwards, we started as a country that produces livestock. We started to import continental cattle from Europe. So breeds like Charolais, Limousin, and so on. And these became, prized animals, but they also are animals that eat a lot of grain. So in a way, they're not really that suited to Ireland, because we are now importing quite a lot of grain to feed these animals to produce beef. And yet we continue to talk about our grass-fed beef, but our beef is only partly grass-fed. It's also being fed with lots of other things. And in fact, much of it is being fed with soya that originates in South America. And so that's not a very good move environmentally. So if we had breeds of animals that simply existed on mainly grass and grass silage or conserved or hay, and we were able to produce the beef from those, you would get, enhanced flavor, but also as well, you would be doing much better environmentally. So I think this is a way we're thinking in terms of the sustainability of our farming systems, looking at them as low input systems that are quite closed, that they don't require large amounts of inputs. And then you need to think about where those inputs originate, because the consumer is starting to become more aware, oftentimes more aware of the farmer than the farmer, and they're starting to ask the questions. So even if we look at the presentation of the vegetables here, trying to reduce plastic, we encourage the stallholders to use paper bags wherever to reduce, plastic, and to try and do everything in a more sustainable way, so that ultimately, there's less waste then. So, it's a challenge that's going to face everybody, and that, is dealing with waste, and not alone waste food, but also the packaging as well that comes with that food. So within the farmers market, we have a situation, in the specialty Carrick and Shannon that we manage, we every so often have a review of them, and then we kind of encourage the stallholders, and that to, as far as possible, remove any of these unsustainable practices. So again, if we, and some of them are quite simple. It's just simply an awareness, because sometimes we get contacted as the people who manage the market, and we're contacted by the consumers who say, oh, so they're still using this in the market, or maybe you could consider doing this. And of course, we always react to that, because you want a situation where the consumer, the consumer's requirements are being considered. And I think that most stallholders do react to that, because they see an increase in sales if they react to the consumer requirements. So just a few statistics here in Ireland. As I say, we are very much an exporting country, and a lot of people would think that Ireland is self-sufficient in food, but we're actually not. And one of the principles that is guiding us more and more is the idea of food sovereignty. And food sovereignty is the idea that individual countries provide culturally appropriate and healthy food for their own populations. And right now, Ireland imports close enough to 80% of all the fruit and vegetables that we consume, which is a crazy situation. And it has come about for many reasons, but one of the reasons it's come about is because of the pressure and the power of supermarkets, that the supermarkets, who buy in huge quantities, are forcing producers to produce at these ridiculously low prices. And so the producer gets bigger and bigger in what is a kind of a race to the bottom to produce food that goes into central distribution and that for the large supermarkets. And so the smaller producers have lost out in that race, and they only can exist where they supply locally, such as in the farmers' markets. So we are left in a situation where we are food insecure. Yes, we produce large volumes of milk powder. We produce large volumes of beef and lamb. Our beef producers, in the main, many of them are economically unviable and would be out of business if it wasn't for direct payments from Europe. Our dairy industry has done quite well, but our dairy industry is now facing into a situation where it's going to have to be either curtailed or reduced because of the impacts on our river and our wells and our environment generally. So there are challenges there for Ireland in terms of the way our food production is happening. But all the time, while Europe has been looking for more and more organic food, we have failed as a country to develop our organic systems. And it has left us with less than 2% of our agricultural area devoted to organic production. And this has been a real mistake, I believe. I think it's you find out how big a mistake is when you deal with your European counterparts who expect Ireland at this stage to be much, much further ahead. So I think we have a big job to do in increasing and making them, ensure that we are supplying our own needs. Okay, we can never grow citrus in Ireland, but there are the staples, the carrots, potatoes, and all of this. I mean, after all, Ireland did have a potato famine, and I think if it was today and we were to be relying on Irish potatoes alone, we would have another potato famine. And we also have a situation as well with regard to our seeds, that a lot of the seeds that we use, both in organics and in conventional farming, are all imported. So these are all challenges. If we hit a situation where, as a result of maybe food scarcities in the world or crop failures, Ireland would be quite vulnerable in many ways. And even with Brexit, which is something that I certainly I'm very disappointed that we have something called Brexit. As somebody who believes in the idea of Europe, I think it's very retrograde, but it has left us in a situation where now that we see additional tariffs and additional impediments to trade, that we're now finding it difficult to get some food products from the UK. And also a lot of the seed potatoes that come in, nearly all the seed potatoes come in from Scotland. So you see that this is where very quickly you can run into problems with food supply. And indeed in Northern Ireland, they have had quite a lot of difficulty getting certain foods from mainland UK as a result of Brexit. Fortunately, in the Republic, we have a lot of markets that we're no longer that dependent on the UK. And I guess there are other opportunities outside of in mainland Europe for our produce. But I think we oftentimes don't concentrate enough on the need to develop local supplies, the need to ensure the sustainability of our farmers, and to make sure that we are able to produce food in abundance for local markets, and we encourage more farmers to opt for the shorter supply chains. But in tandem with that, we also need the legal infrastructure. And so we need local abattoirs. We need people to be able to produce their food and prepare their food for markets. And so we have worked quite for a long time with the Food Artisan, or the Food Safety Authority of Ireland. And there is now an artisan forum set up under the Food Safety Authority, where we can go every 2 months and we can lobby on issues that affect our members. And I know that speaking to Italian colleagues before, they have huge issues with the phytosanitary rules that exist in individual member states, because the legislation in Europe can be transposed differently in different member states. So, you know, a change in the rules could make life very difficult for a cheese producer or somebody producing salamis or other food products locally. So I think, you know, we have to be always careful that the rules that come from Europe at Food Safety Authority level, that they're not putting small producers out of business, that small producers have every much a right to produce food for the local markets as large industrial complexes with all their biosecurity and everything else like that. I think we have to make sure, and I think because of the food traditions in Europe, and certainly, you know, we have our colleagues in France and in Italy and right across Europe have strong food traditions, and, you know, we'll say with their PDO and PGI certifications, you know, want to make sure that they can access, you know, the salamis and cheeses and meats and all the other things that are part of their culinary history and tradition. And we want that to happen here as well. But big agriculture and the big industrial complex really would like to grab those things and dumb them all down, so that you know, that camembert can be, you know, an industrialized product when it should never be. So I think that we always have to be vigilant. We have to make sure that we are able to influence that. Like, there is one issue, and of course we want to make sure food is safe for consumers, but we also want to make sure that we can supply good quality local food. And so, for instance, things like raw milk, of course that has to be regulated, but it shouldn't be a situation where you can't have any raw milk because one or two people may get sick, you know, from that. I think there has to be a situation where the traditions in the individual countries and that are respected, where we have good hygiene, but it ensures that small producers can produce their food, and then they can sell it either from their farm, or they can sell it through a market, or they can sell it via the website, or in any of the new formats that come up that allow people to sell food to consumers. So, I look at. I'm not sure if I'm covering everything that's that people online expect. I can take questions from you with respect to anything that I've said. Just very quickly, if I can maybe just go back to the cooperative I'm in. We have over 200 members. Some are more active than others. Again, mostly they're organic farmers, and many of them participate in farmers markets. Some of them sell their cattle through the livestock marts that we work with. Some of them also are involved in things such as social farming or care farming. So because the organic farm provides a platform for many different things, many of the organic farmers now take in people with special needs onto their farms for 1 or 2 days a week under social farming arrangements. So these people may be, you know, people who are in care, or they may be in special facilities because of some disabilities, etc. But they have access to farms as a way of rehabilitation. So the organic farm provides a very natural environment for people with a whole range of, you know, I think of people who have maybe drug addictions and so on, that they can become, that the farm becomes part of the rehabilitation of those people. And so this is another thing that if you create the right environment, you know, it can deliver so many different benefits. So we call those benefits public goods. And indeed, the Common Agricultural Policy recognizes the term public goods. And I think that if you are a farm that's helping to rehabilitate somebody or to improve that person's health, well, then you're providing a very good, a public good. I mean, clean water is also a public good. So I think we need to look strongly again through the cap at the types of farming that provide public goods. And again, more and more, we're starting to look as well now at soil. At the biological characteristics of the soil, rather than just simply adding chemicals to soil. We need to start to look at more and more we're looking at the balance between biology and the biological and the fungal aspects of soil, because this is something that was known before, but because there was no money in it, it wasn't pursued. But all over the world, we now see farming moving to biological and regenerative models. And there's a lot of work going on there. Organic farmers are heavily involved in that, because we are losing and damaging soils at an incredible rate. And as we do that, the ability of those soils to produce food becomes less and less. And so we have a big job of work through the application of regenerative and biological tools to improve our soil. And once we improve the soil, everything above ground should technically improve, because the soil is the basis for everything. So some very interesting things happening in Ireland. Again, looking at, for instance, the idea of how, with more extreme rainfall events, we control water flow in rivers and lakes, how, again, we manage catchments on rivers and lakes to ensure that water doesn't run quickly downstream and cause flooding down in towns and villages and so on. So again, there's quite a lot of projects supported by Europe under the European Innovation Partnership that we are working on the periphery of. There are also as well the areas of tourism. We are encouraging our members, and in fact we have one member at Carrick and Shannon who's developing from spa water that's on his farm, is trying to develop a skincare product based on sulfur water from his farm, and create a tourism product around that as well. So all in all, always the way we look at our individual farmers now, you kind of look at the strengths that they have on their farm, their own capacities, and if they come with a plan or an idea, that we can direct them in the right way. We can put them in touch with the leader company, the local enterprise office. We can advise them maybe on other than just simply strictly, dealing with their farm issue, looking at the totality of what they have on their farm and how they can add value through peripheral activity, whether it's through tourism, through adding value to develop a product, whether it's accommodation on their farms, whether it's ecotourism, social farming. We have links into all of these things so that we can pick the phone up and find the right person. So I'd just like to thank you for listening. I hope some of that gives you a flavour for what we do. And if you have any questions, I'm quite happy to answer them.
Thanks, John. That was a really great presentation and very in-depth as well. And we have a load of really praising comments for you here in the chat. And we also have some questions as well. So I'm just going to read them out to you, and you can take them as
Thank you, Sonia.
No problem. So Grace is asking, what size is a smallholder? Is it by acre or hectare?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the reason it's a very good question, it has only come up in discussions in the last week. In the case of Ireland and under the CAP, as far as I understand at European level, a smallholder will be a farm that is under 30 hectares. That seems to be the definition of smallholder, which is quite large. If you were to go to Romania, that would be quite a large farm, and indeed many parts of Central Europe. So the smallholder would have other characteristics as well, in that they would be generally deriving most of their income. If it's a husband and wife or family, they're deriving most of their income from the farm, that they would be involved in shorter food supply chains, so that they would be selling directly from the farm, selling through local markets, and that would be the nature of that. And in general, there are people who virtually get no compensation at all from the cap. And I do remember when Dacian Ciolos, he's now the Romanian Prime Minister.
He's not.
He was. He's gone, is he?
For a blissful 9 months, he was, yes.
I hope the move isn't to the right, but anyway, so he told me about the 3 million small farmers that were in Romania, and how, you know, some of them just didn't even have land. They may have had a cow. And again, I was trying to relate that back to our own situation. But I think that the organizations like La Via Campesina have defined what smallholders are. And in fact, we now sit at European level. We now in Ireland have representatives who go to DG Agri meetings. And that is really a big move, because this is the first time that through the connections with La Via Campesina, that we can actually start to put together a shape on policies that, you know, affect the smallholders, and that actually affect them positively, in that will ensure more of them remain on the land in rural areas. And what we're seeing is, since the last recession and with COVID, we're seeing again a move back to the land. People are saying, well, do I really need to live in a city? Could I have a small holding in a rural area with good broadband? I'm well connected, you know. So with the mixture of good infrastructure and an improving one in our own area in Leitrim, we can have people who can be both smallholder and possibly digital nomad as well. So I think that there are benefits from technology, and also the fact that with good communications, they can use technology as well to help them to market and sell their products.
Okay, perfect. Another question here is regarding the preservation of rare breeds and whether it's a key part of environmental sustainability.
It is, for me, a key part of environmental sustainability. However, it's a fringe part of what goes on at agricultural level. So rare breeds under the CAP are generally they're generally covered in Pillar 2 of the CAP, which is the Rural Development Programme. Quite a small amount of money is devoted to them, and so I think there needs to be much more and robust protections put in place for rare breeds. Now, in Ireland, we have, in our cattle breed, we have the Irish Moyle, the Dexter, the Kerry, and more recently we have a new breed recognised called the Drimmen. And maybe at another time, if I have some more pictures, I might be able to show you these breeds. But we also have, I'm delighted recently, we had one sheep breed, the Galway ewe, but now we also have one called the Clador, which is a breed that was a mountain breed from the County Galway in the west of Ireland, which is now recognised as well. And so we have in Ireland an Irish Rare Breed, Irish Native and Rare Breed Society that is an overarching organisation, which is now interfacing with the Department of Agriculture and the National Parks and Wildlife Commission as well, and others, to try and increase the visibility for rare breeds. And when it comes to animals, the best way of protecting rare breeds is to drink the milk and eat the meat from them. Really, I mean, it's not the idea that you keep them off in national parks. I think once farmers are farming them, and once they're breeding them and all of that, and once there are supports in, because some of these animals take longer to mature. You know, they're not fast maturing. You don't just put lots and lots of grain into them. They generally are grass-based animals, and the restaurants and all the people who purchase them, they want that reflected in the meat. So rare breeds are certainly, they're in a better place than they were 10 or 15 years ago, but they need a lot more support both at Irish and European level.
And do you think different types of animals should be kept on different types of land, or does that not factor in?
Yes, I think it's a good point. I think that certain animals, the Irish Moyle, maybe can I pull up is it possible for me just to pull up a photograph there, Sonia?
You can stop the sharing and then start it again. So open your file, your photo. So I'll stop your sharing, and then you can open your file and then start sharing again.
Okay, so if I can. Okay, so I'll just.
Just start sharing again as.
I'll just yeah, I'll just go back to if I can. Yeah. So I think this is quite a distinctive animal. So I go back again. Sorry, just
No.
go back to my Zoom.
No worries.
And I share the screen. Okay, I thought I had it there. Just bear with me another moment. Oh yeah, here we go. Here we go.
While John is searching for the photo, can I pose a question for our partners in France, Germany, and Portugal? Is the preservation and promotion of rare heritage breeds being supported in your countries? You can have a think about it while John shows us.
Okay, so can you see the screen?
No.
Oh, okay, so maybe I haven't shared the screen properly.
Just click on the green button there.
Oh yeah, see now, okay. And there we go. Okay, can people see those?
Yep.
Okay, so this breed is particularly interesting from the point of view of the last question, because the Irish moiled animal, again being our oldest native breed, these are animals I have myself. The animal has a large gut, and the large gut is because they are very well adapted to grazing rough herbage in mountains, rush type farmland as well that we have a lot of in Leitrim. And they also have a unique hardiness. The animals themselves don't have horns, they're polled, and their meat has some unique characteristics as well. But they are a dual purpose animal. They will give both milk and meat. There are one or two herds, and in fact, one of our members makes cheese from the Irish moiled cows. I think that these will do well across a wide range of soil types, but they do particularly well in remote areas and in mountainous and areas where the land is quite poor.
So we have some contributions here in the chat regarding the question I posed earlier regarding rare breeds in our partner countries. So apparently in Portugal, this isn't supported much, and some breeds are supported by geographical labels like GIP or DOP.
Yeah.
And some problems with the seeds in Portugal. Apparently now there are private companies that are trying to produce seeds as well. So that's...
we're talking about seeds, is it?
Clara, if you would like to jump in and expand on your comment there regarding seeds in
it was
in
not my comment, it was Raquel's comment.
Raquel.
But she was saying that also with protecting seeds, local seeds, there's some movement now going on in Portugal.
Okay, and that's great, Clara. Yeah, in Ireland we have an organisation called Irish Seed Savers. If you want to Google them, Irish Seed Savers, they are really have done great work in preserving old traditional varieties of apples, a whole range of different, maybe old cabbages and other seeds as well. So we have some good work going on there through Irish Seed Savers. But again, things get lost and sometimes we can't get them back. But we do have these animals here, and we are holding on to them. And just this morning, one of my cows calved with a lovely calf. And the interesting thing about these animals, when they calve, because of the history of them, and when you think about it, these cows were around at a time in Ireland when we probably had wolves, like in your countries. So the calf is almost up in a couple of moments. They just literally drop out and they're on their feet, and they're really, really hardy. So they're very much, they exhibit a lot of traits that would kind of indicate that they were around at a time when, there were more predators in the environment.
Excellent. I've just popped the link to Irish Seed Savers in the chat if anyone wants to have a look there. Does anybody have any other questions for John?
I just want to say I was in Coimbra last year in Portugal and had a really nice time. It's beautiful there.
Yes, Portugal is one of my favorite countries as well.
You should come to the south, Alentejo.
Okay.
John, I just tried the Dexter cow for the first time. Little short-legged cow.
Yeah, that's right.
Very unusual. It's actually quite incredible how distinctive the taste of meat are when you're aware of the type of cow that you're eating, because a lot of our supermarket packaging doesn't tell us the type of cow.
Yeah, I'll just bring up the Dexter. Can people still see? My screen is white now, but
yeah,
I'm just. You can see now. Can you see those black animals?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are Dexters, and Dexters are quite small animals. They are thought to have links to the Kerry breed, but at some stage the two divided and they became slightly different. They're also interesting. Some of them are horned, some of them have no horns. They're only about 3 feet tall, so they're quite small. But you have to think about the areas of the country that they're in: Sligo, Leitrim, and because they're quite light, they don't do very much damage to the soil. So they're easy on the land. Again, they're very, very hardy. The meat is marbled so that you get a lovely mixture of the fat through the beef, and it does have a unique flavor as well. And I think this is something that is only being rediscovered again. If you feed animals, cattle, if you're feeding them, concentrates of barley, oats, and all of this kind of thing, and they're being fed from sheds and all that, you get a certain flavor. It may be consistent, but not unique. Also, as well, you will be getting a lot of omega-3 and omega-6 from the grass-fed meat. And I think I spoke earlier about micronutrients and the idea that food is no longer nutrient dense. Well, this is a way of producing beef as I see it, in a very sustainable way, but also conserving our genetic resources as well, and also as well helping I would say helping to preserve the breeds, but also supporting farmers. And I think the CAP has a job to ensure that all of this is seen as a public good. Like the fact that these breeds don't go extinct makes everything more diverse. And if you go to a farm and you can see these animals on the farm, and then you can taste the meat and all that, I think it's a very good way of conserving the breed. I'm not urging that we all become vegan and we put these into the zoo. I don't think that's the right way to preserve the breed. Preserve the breed.